For the first time since March of 2020, the American unemployment rate is below 5%. In just 8 months since I became president, in the midst of a grave public health and economic crisis, the unemployment rate is now down below 5% at 4.8%.
Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. Although President Biden proudly touted the improvement in America's unemployment rate during today's address, economists have deemed the jobs numbers a significant miss on expectations. As President Biden noted, the unemployment rate had fallen to 4.8% in September from 5.2% in August. But economists and labor experts attribute a substantial portion of the unemployment dip to the 183,000 Americans who had left the labor force over the same period. Also of note is that of those who left, approximately 83,000 were Black. The Black exodus from the labor force has also reduced the Black community's unemployment rate to 7.9% in September from 8.8% in August. Despite the almost full 1 percentage point drop, Black unemployment was still double the rate of white unemployment. According to analysis by the Washington Post, even Black people with college degrees have a higher unemployment rate than white Americans with only a high school education. Also, unemployment among Black women of all educational levels has recovered at the least of any group. There's a reported 550,000 fewer Black women employed now than in February 2020. The pandemic had left Black women with the most challenging employment mountain to climb, and industries typically heavily populated by Black women, such as health services, child care, and leisure, have been the slowest to recover. But the sluggish recovery of various industries is not the only factor impacting the return of employment of Black America. Many have cited lingering fears of COVID, lack of representation, and systemic discrimination in the hiring process as hurdles as well. Joining us to discuss, a professor of economics and international relations at Michigan State University, Lisa Cook, and associate professor of economics at Colorado State University, Dr. Guy Numa. So, Professor Cook, it's very hard for people to understand that the unemployment rate is going down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people are getting back to work at the same pace that they need to. Help us just to untangle the number and what Biden was saying today. He made it seem like this was a great job.
That's a really good question. There is an even split for the Black unemployment rate between those who have exited the labor force altogether, over 100,000, and those who have gone into employment. So for us, it really is a more nuanced story and troubling story. And what we know about the sectors that were hard hit from the very beginning, leisure, hospitality, education, leisure and hospitality came back and continue to come back as they did in previous months. But education fell sharply. And employment in the public sector also fell sharply, and the government sector also fell sharply, where a lot of African Americans, especially African American women, are employed. So it was a really mixed report, if not troubling report, with respect to Black unemployment.
Dr. Numa, I want to stick on that issue of Black women's unemployment. It is another one of those weird anomalies that Black women are the most highly educated sector of the of the population, but at the same time, they are the ones struggling the most with unemployment. Why exactly is that, other than these particular sectors that they are kind of over-indexed in or having a hard time coming back?
Well, one of the reasons is that we do know that Black women face much harder hurdles, right, than other groups or other categories. More responsibilities, childcare or taking care of parents. So it might be one of the reasons why the numbers are that disappointing. But there is a larger problem that goes beyond Black women, and I would like to touch upon that regarding the Black unemployment rate, so to speak. I think that it's been quite a while that the labor force participation rate had dipped a bit. I remember that prior to the world and the country shutting down, we have seen disappointing trend. And what it means is that there are structural obstacles, hurdles that Black folks face, and I think that that's what needs to be addressed.
Professor Cook, I want to follow up on that. Dr. Numa was talking about elder care, child care. Well, that's exactly what much of the Build Back Better plan is meant to address. Would that plan and the elements of it kind of change the dynamics of the unemployment picture, particularly for Black people, particularly for Black women?
I think it absolutely would. The scandal in America that has to do with childcare is just unacceptable. And we are the only country in the OECD among rich countries that is so starkly against making childcare widely available so that women can participate in the economy, which is very striking because we're still one of the richest countries in the OECD. So it's very striking. But yes, support for that part of the infrastructure that is much needed for increasing labor force participation, I think, is not only a cornerstone of the budget reconciliation, but something that has to be addressed long term if we want as many people as possible to participate in the economy. And my research shows, just by the way, that if more women and African Americans participated in the innovation economy, GDP per capita or living standards would be 0.6% to 4.4% higher if we just eliminated those barriers. And part of eliminating those barriers has to do with providing childcare for those people who are in the innovation economy. So it's just one example. So I think this is a very good plan that the Biden administration is putting forward.
Dr. Newman, there's also this phenomenon of people just reassessing and just taking stock of their lives. They got a break in a way. There were checks, on what we want to call them, stimulus checks or whatever. The people were able to take a breath and say, maybe I don't want to work for these slave wages. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want to. This course of my life, I want to change it and do something completely different. How is that rippling through the kind of employment landscape and changing our expectations and about what these numbers even mean?
Well, the channel of transmission from receiving a check or income or transfer from the government to actual production is quite long. Fortunately, the American economy is flexible enough to show positive results in the future. And that's why I do believe, like my friend and colleague Lisa Cook, that the Build Better Back program is positive. But Dr. Lisa Cook also talked about innovation. And what it shows is that personal responsibility or working hard is not enough. What needs to be addressed are structural measures and policies, access to capital, access to more credit, right? So that folks can not only reassess what they would like to do, but so that Black folks can say, okay, I not only want to start a business, but I can because I do have access to capital. We know countless studies have shown that the racial wealth gap, because that's really what it is about. And in a sense, the unemployment numbers are just a reflection of this larger problem. The racial wealth gap between white households and Black and brown households is 8 times, 5 times. in terms of differential between white and black and brown households. So access to capital and credit is key. The willingness to reinvent the wheel and reinvent and reassess what should be done is just a starter. But if black folks don't have access to capital, just like white folks have access to capital, I think that we will keep seeing disappointing numbers in terms of unemployment.
Professor Cook, you know, there's no doubt that Dr. Newman is right that there's not the same level of access to capital and credit, but aren't some of the black people who are choosing not to return to the labor force doing so because they are in fact starting businesses?
That's right. We have a record number of them. And in my state, in Michigan, this has been a 55% increase in the number of businesses that have been started since 2020. So this is there's a silver lining, and the stimulus checks that we were just talking about may have provided the kind of capital that African Americans typically don't have in a lump sum. So they may be making different choices now that may lead to the employment of an individual. Most businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships. They don't necessarily employ people, but that's okay because this could be one person employed, but they may be pursuing entrepreneurial activities that they had not had a chance to before. So I think this is a part of the great reassessment. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out going forward.
Dr. Guy Numa and Professor Lisa Cook, thank you both for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.